Her stomach drops. The wind howls in her ears and rips at her clothes. Someone screams. Any moment now her limbs will twitch and she'll wake up. She'll find herself safe and warm in a bed somewhere, where she'll roll over and fall back into a dreamless sleep until her alarm rings. Allie opens her eyes and shrieks. She is suspended in thin air, splayed out and staring up at the sky. She blinks and rubs her eyes until she sees a glowing golden spots. Carefully reaching beneath her, she searches for any harnesses, ropes, or platforms, but her fingers find nothing. Above her eyes, find an azure sky filled with swirling wisps of white clouds that look frothy ocean waves painted in the air. To her left, a flock of large white birds is frozen in mid-flight, as if someone paused on a movie. So far below is a canopy of lush green rainforests. Her imagination paints a vivid picture of the razor-sharp rocks hidden beneath that would break her bones and spill her blood if she falls. Tendrils of panic curl around her heart as she gulps for air. "I'm dreaming! This isn't real!" Her voice comes out muffled and flat. The heavy silence that follows leaves her a deafening ringing in her ears. "Where am I?" Allie carefully cranes her neck, afraid of the tiniest movement will free her from the visible perch. To the right is the Emerald Mountain, lined with sharp cliffs and dozens of thin white waterfalls. Beyond that is a long valley, thick with vegetation, which seems to disappear into a shimmering sapphire ocean. At the top of the nearest cliff, several frozen figures look down from her on the edge. She squints into the bright sunlight and frowns. One of them is wearing a familiar black baseball cap. Her hands tighten into fists. "This is CO.AG," she said to her boyfriend. Tej had already taken a long trip here in hopes of salvaging her frayed relationship. Allie lets out a yip as she falls, her long brown hair whipping into her eyes and mouth. After 2 or 3 seconds, she comes to a stop, so suddenly that her head snaps forward and her teeth click together, barely missing the end of her tongue. "What the hell?" she whispers, glancing around. She notices that the white birds have also moved. The one leading the flock now has its beak open, as if yelling at the other birds to hurry up. "Okay, this has got to end. Wake up!" She grabs the skin of the back of her hand and twists hard, but all she gets is a brief jolt of pain that brings her tears to her eyes. No longer caring if she falls, Allie kicks her legs and screams at the top of her lungs. The sound is flat and unsatisfying, and the dream refuses to end. She pants and hangs like a rag doll, of course. Tej would passed out on the couch tonight. She thinks as if she had come to bed, she would have yanked all the covers to his side, tossed and turned to get comfortable, and kicked her feet a few times for good measure, bringing this nightmare to an end. For once she'd welcome his terrible bad critique. A shriek escapes from her mouth as she drops for another second before halting abruptly. After several minutes, there is no further descent. Allie does her best to breathe slowly and relax her shoulders enough to pull them down from her ears. Nothing in the dream changes from what seemed like hours. To pass time, Allie sings a song that's been stuck in her head all week. When she runs out of lyrics, she starts counting anything and everything she can see: birds, rocks, waterfalls, people, but there was only so much you can see when you're stuck. Blowing air through the pierced lips, she puts a hand under her head and stares up at the sky with unfocused eyes. Random thoughts fit through her mind. What time is it? I need to do laundry. Do other people have dreams like this? This is so boring. At least when people fall in movies, their lives flash before their eyes. Her eyes widened as she's shaken from the reverts. Dreams are in your brain's way of trying to make sense of things. She was pretty sure she had read something like that in a psychology textbook in college. Maybe I have to figure something out. Allie chews her lip. She's been unhappy with about everything in her life for as long as she could remember. This could take a while. She ticks the two biggest issues off of her fingers. She hates her job. She stopped painting, and she waits for a moment but doesn't move. Sighs, she ticks off another issue. Her relationship is in a wreck. Gravity suddenly returns for seconds before disappearing again. Glancing at the ground with grimace, she sets back one aside for a moment. Let's start off with my job. Every weekday, she has a long, crowded commute to a nameless office building where numbers are crunched and many army of cogs who could easily be replaced by robots. All of her co-workers dress the same, eat the same lunches, and talk about the same bullshit every day. Maybe they already robots. Allie thinks with a smirk. Overall, the pay is alright, but the mind-numbing monotony is sucking the soul out of her. She's pretty sure she could find a better job, so why haven't she looked? She nibbles on the ragged fingernail before releasing a long breath. Tage? When Allie mentioned wanting to job hunt, his concern wasn't that she would have a hard time finding a new job, or that she might just be unhappy somewhere else. It was as if she actually liked her job. She might be willing to work longer hours, or heaven forbid, she could make some friends. In either scenario, she may neglect her relationship. Neglect him. She closes her eyes. I need to find a better job. It doesn't feel as if she's moving. Opening her eyes as a moss-covered rock jutting out from the cliff to her right seems to be a bit higher than it normally had been moments ago. Allie glances to the left. The beak of the large white bird is starting to close, as if it finished what it was saying to the flock behind it. That's not it, isn't it? She sighs and takes in the specular scenery. People pay serious money for helicopter tours to see this. The waterfalls on the cliffs are so far away, they look delicate white lines carved into emerald green walls. It's all so beautiful. I wish I could paint it. She was a child. Allie had always loved painting. It was her leave behind the boring life and lose her of her own world for hours on end. When it came time to apply to colleges, she wanted to go to art school, but her mother forbade it. Better to get a real degree job than end up starving artist. Allie could paint on the side, but after graduating and getting a job, finding the time to paint started to feel like a chore. Half-finished canvases began to stack up on the corner of her studio. To regain some motivation, she tried entering a local art competition. Her surprising win set off obsession. She began painting early in the morning into the late into night, skipping meals and sleep. After a dozen more entries, however, she didn't win. Out of desperation, she asked Tage for advice, smiling and patting her on the head, and she said, "Your paintings are a Led Zeppelin cover band. You'll play all the right notes, but there is no soul. You can't change that, babe. You can either have it or you don't." Allie was crushed when she wallowed in bed for days. As the weeks and months passed, she found it impossible to make herself paint anymore. At one point, even thinking about it brought on to a panic attack. Her last unfinished painting was sitting on the easel, hidden underneath the layers of shirts and bras. She scrubs her face and eyes start to burn. I don't need to win. I just need to paint the love for it again. She only falls for a second and shakes her head. I knew it. It's not about work or painting. She absentmindedly plucking a loose end for a hem of her shirt. She whispers, "It all comes back to him, doesn't it?" Not long after college, she and Tage met at open mic that night at the coffee house. He was handsome and well built, and a lopsided grin found adorable. But it was the stories that really drew her to him. He was gifted a storyteller and a ton of internet followers to show for it. He wrote about young people trapped in an unchanging world, created and controlled by the old and indifferent. Every story told within his deep, warm voice was angry, sarcastic, and hilarious. They felt so real, detailing everything Allie had experienced and felt. It was like he was inside her head. She instantly fell in love with the idea of whose talented artists coming together and sharing their passions for the rest of their lives. The thought grew so large in Allie's mind that it completely obscured all the red flags. The jealousy, the pettiness, the verbal abuse, the whiplash including mood swings. She drops for several seconds before coming to a jarring halt. Her heart races as she gasps for air. It's just like a dream, she thinks as she peeks at the ground. A wave of vertigo washes over her for a moment, making her grit her teeth. So why am I dreaming about this place? Tej hated making decisions, so he always felt everything up to Allie. But if she made up the wrong choice, because she couldn't guess what he wanted, he'd sulk and guilt trip her for days or weeks. On the CO.AG trip, she tried to go through the CO.AG overlook on the last day. Her trusty guidebook said that within the elevation of over 400,000 feet, it was the best spot to see iconic wind-curved cliffs that jutted from the lush valley. Unfortunately, Allie had made the wrong decision as usual. Tej wanted to get a high-end nap on the beach instead, so he'd been in a foul mood for the whole car ride there, pulling his ever-present black baseball cap over his face and pretending to sleep, only for her entertainment had been poorly pronounced directions coming from her phone as Google Maps struggled with the Hawaiian names. But she would have laughed it off if she hadn't been in such a shitty mood. She tilts her head to see the people on the cliff tops and frowns. What happened to the overlook? I don't remember driving back to the hotel. Allie chews on her thumbnail and stares out on the island for a long time, without seeing it, as events of that day finally piece themselves back together. She bites the nail at the skin, drawing blood. When they arrived at the overlook, Tej immediately picked a fight over her poor decision-making skills. The cliff top was crowded, so they were walking around unsuccessfully, trying to look what they weren't fighting. But some of the tourists pretend to notice, while others leaned closer trying to catch the dirty detail of their drama. Allie finally yelled something and threw the car keys at Tej before storming off to the edge of the cliff. He swore and stomped through the grass after her. Allie looks up at the tourists, milling her around in various states of panic or disbelief. At least one of them seemed to be taking a picture or video of her. She gives him a toothy smile while flicking him off. Tej is kneeling at the edge looking down at her. He doesn't seem surprised or upset. His eyes were just empty, as if he was waiting at the top of the doctor's office or in line at the grocery store. He's an asshole in my dreams too. Allie sucks in a sharp breath. After she stormed off, she stood right where Tej is now and told him that she was leaving him. He had smirked and said that she wouldn't do it. He said that she wouldn't have the guts. The world around her starts to move slowly, as if waking up from a long nap. The birds begin to flap their wings. The people at the top of the cliff begin to shrink. Everyone screams. Suddenly the air leaves Allie's lungs in a whoosh. Her stomach drops and her teeth slam together, catching the end of her tongue. Coppery blood fills her mouth as she gags, spitting out the scarlet strands of saliva. She howls with laughter. She is going to take back her life and do the things her way. She'll start by packing her bags the second she wakes up, finally freeing herself from the 5-year rut. I'm leaving you, asshole! The rushing wind immediately steals her words. Tej stands up and dusts the red dirt off his knees, pulling the car keys from his pocket. He tosses them in the air and catches them with a smile and tugs at his lips. Allie grins, imagining the look on his face in the morning when she walks out of the door for the last time. The snow-white birds soared over the tourists. Silver rains begin to fall. Allie reaches the terminal velocity. As she plummets towards a sharp obsidian rocks, lying underneath the delicate green ferns, waiting to break her bones and spill her crimson blood. She thinks about the brilliant colors she'll use to paint this beautiful place. What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video. And I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Miss Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.